I used to have a corner office with a skyline view. Now, I stand by the glass doors in the lobby, security badge clipped to my chest, holding a clipboard I don't need. People walk past like I'm part of the furniture. Some pretend not to see me. Others smile. Politely, nervously. But no one dares ask why the former head of technical operations is now the building's doorman. They don't know the story. Not yet. It started 2.5 weeks ago, on a Wednesday. I had just finished presenting the final results of a logistics overhaul that took 18 months of my life. We'd rolled out across 3 continents, slashed delivery times by 27%, and reduced errors to under 0.3%. It was the kind of presentation people save for promotions. The boardroom erupted in applause. Even Ellison, the CEO, stood and said, "This is the future of TRX logistics." But for the first time in months, I let myself believe I might actually get the promotion I'd been working toward for years. Then came the announcement. "Before we close," Ellison said, "I'd like to introduce someone very special. Please welcome James Dunley, our new Vice President of Operations." There was no warning, no explanation, no mention of my name. James walked in with a polished smile and a firm handshake. I clapped along with the others, too stunned to move. He didn't even glance in my direction. That afternoon, an email from HR hit my inbox. Subject: Transition Meeting, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In the small beige conference room, an HR rep explained that I'd be transitioning to a more facilities-focused role as part of internal restructuring. My new title? Facilities Liaison. I walked out of that room hollow. All the applause, all the smiles, all the praise. They had meant nothing. That night, after putting my daughter to bed, I opened the attached HR memo again. Staring at it in the blue glow of my kitchen, the document was dated 3 days before my presentation, 3 days before Ellison smiled in my face, 3 days before the board told me I was the future. They had already decided I didn't belong. The fabric itched. It wasn't the uniform's fault. It was new, probably fresh from storage. But something about the stiff collar and the plastic name tag made my skin crawl. Lena Ho, Facilities Liaison, in bold black letters. As if a title could erase everything I'd done before. It was my first day in the lobby. The same lobby I used to sweep through on my way to project meetings. The same glass doors I'd passed holding coffee in one hand and a strategy binder in the other. Now, I stood beside those doors like I was guarding them. The security desk had a screen with the building's visitor logs and a clipboard with a sign-in sheet no one used anymore. My only job was to stand straight, smile politely, and pretend I didn't notice the glances. The worst part wasn't the strangers. It was the familiar faces. Leo from finance nodded at me, but quickly looked away. Nia from compliance gave a small smile, then sped up her walk. Maya, my former team lead, pretended to be answering a call. Not one of them asked what happened. Not one dared stop. By 11 o'clock, my cheeks burned more from shame than from the morning sun coming through the lobby windows. Then James appeared. He walked through the turnstiles with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his life. Tan suit, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. He didn't even slow down as he passed me. "Try not to be late this time. Lena," he said without looking up. My jaw clenched. I said nothing, just nodded like the good soldier they'd turned me into. He disappeared into the elevator, and the doors closed behind him with a soft, final thud. At 12:15 in the afternoon, I stepped outside to get a breath of air and check my phone. A missed call from the school. My daughter had forgotten her lunch. I texted her that I'd pack an extra snack tomorrow. I added a heart emoji. She replied with a thumbs up. I was about to go back inside when someone brushed past my arm, close enough to feel deliberate. I turned. It was Ethan. He used to run back-end infrastructure with me. Smart, quiet, loyal. He didn't stop walking, just slipped something into my hand and kept going. A USB drive. No note. No words. Just a whispered sentence as he passed. You still have access. Use it if you need to. I closed my fist around the drive and stared after him. Maybe I wasn't as erased as they thought. The shift ended just after 6:15 in the evening. I didn't go home. Instead, I sat in my car at the far end of the parking lot. Engine off, windows fogging, the silence pressing down like a second seatbelt across my chest. The uniform felt tighter somehow, heavier, like the day had stitched shame into the seams. Every look, every silence, every polite smile that didn't quite reach their eyes, it built up like static. And now, the charge was sitting in my throat, waiting to burn through. I reached into the glove box and pulled out the old voice recorder I used to carry for meeting notes. I hadn't touched it in months. My thumb hovered, then clicked play. The crackle of cheap audio gave way to laughter. Mine. And my team's. She stayed up 42 hours to fix that Tokyo shipment loop. Someone joked. She's the firewall in the damn lifeboat. Another voice added. Lena's not a manager. She's the engine. The breath caught in my throat. I remembered that day. It was after we survived a near-system crash during the global rollout. They'd brought cupcakes to the war room. I'd laughed so hard I nearly cried. Now. I cried for real. Not loud, not messy. Just quiet sobs that came slow. Then faster, until I was shaking. Palms over my face. I hadn't cried. Not since the demotion. Not since the first time James walked past me like I was a ghost. I thought I was past it. I thought numbness meant healing, but it didn't. It meant I hadn't felt it yet. And now, I was drowning in it. When the tears slowed, I reached for the only thing that made sense. My laptop. I connected to a private network, opened the internal architecture portal, and typed in my old root credentials. Access. Granted. I blinked. Not surface-level access. Full system root. Somehow, in their rush to erase me from the org chart. They'd forgotten to revoke the one thing that mattered most. Or maybe they didn't even know where to look. I sat back, heart still unsteady, then leaned forward again. Just to check something, I reached into my bag for a tissue and instead pulled out a rolled-up page, creased at the corners. Edges worn, the system blueprint, my blueprint, the one I'd sketched on my kitchen table 2 years ago with a glass of wine and too much ambition. Every core module, every access point, every manual override. It was the only full diagram that still existed. I'd never digitized it. I stared at it for a long time. If this company ever burned down, this piece of paper might be the only thing that could rebuild it. And right now, I was the only one holding it. It started as a habit. Late at night, after my daughter had gone to sleep and the house had gone still. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm tea and open my laptop. The screen glowed softly, illuminating the same system I used to oversee from an executive office, only now. I accessed it from the shadows. They hadn't revoked my credentials, buried deep in the back end, past the generic user interfaces and departmental dashboards. I still had root access to the architecture itself. It was like finding the key to a house you'd been locked out of, only to realize the new tenants didn't even know you still owned the foundation. At first, I didn't touch anything, I just watched. James had made several updates in his first 2 weeks, publicized with internal memos filled with buzzwords like streamlined, agile, and real-time efficiency. But I could see the cracks forming. Latency logs were up 12%. 2 major processes had been rerouted inefficiently, causing delays in dispatch that hadn't existed under my original design. Worse, the new configurations lacked safeguards. If too many variables shifted at once, the system would bottleneck. And James, so proud, so busy leading, had no clue. I should have been furious. But fury fades. What stayed behind was colder, sharper, resentment, honed into strategy. So I wrote a new protocol. Quietly, carefully. Hidden in the base layer of system behavior, I named it lock mode. If the system sensed instability above a certain threshold, shipment delays, data conflicts, access pings from unauthorized nodes, it would initiate a controlled shutdown. No crashes, no alarms, just silence. A full pause, one no one could bypass without the original recovery key, which I held. I encrypted the protocol manually, without any traceable meta tags. I documented nothing in the company logs. And in the final line of code, just before the system buried it into its deepest layer, I typed, "System created by L. Ho." It was still there, despite the restructuring, despite the ceremony of removing me from leadership, despite James parading around like the architect of progress. They had left my signature intact. And now, the system remembered me, quietly, permanently, undeniably. I leaned back in my chair and closed the laptop. The kitchen was quiet again. Except for the sound of the refrigerator humming in the dark, they had erased me from the building, but not from the machine. The first one to stop was Maya. She didn't say much, just slid a cup of coffee across the front desk, eyes lowered like she was breaking some kind of unspoken rule. "Still hot?" she said, then walked off before I could respond. I stood there for a moment, fingers curled around the cup. My name wasn't on it, but I knew the order: no sugar, extra shot, the same I used to have waiting in the war room during launch week. The next day, it was Leo, then Ava. Quiet nods, soft words. No one lingered long, but the pattern was clear. They were circling back, not with confrontation, not with protest, but with presence, and presence, when you've been made invisible, is a form of rebellion. None of them asked what I was doing in the lobby. None needed to. They already knew. The system had a memory, and so did they. Then came the breaking point. Tomas, one of the most reliable back-end engineers I'd ever worked with, was called into HR and placed on administrative leave. Failure to adapt to new process expectations, the email said, that same week. James introduced his KPI realignment initiative. Higher quotas, tighter deadlines, shorter review windows, bonuses delayed, flexibility revoked. It was pressure disguised as progress. I could see it wearing them down, their faces drawn tighter, their movements clipped, their glances toward me longer. I said nothing, not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't afford to say anything yet. But the rage didn't go away. It coiled low in my chest, burning slow and quiet like a fuse. Friday afternoon. After James gave another all-hands talk full of synergy and optimization, I checked my personal inbox on my phone. There was a forwarded message from one of our oldest clients, Global Source Logistics. The subject line read, "Clarification on point of contact." The body was short, formal, and sharp. "If Lena Ho is no longer overseeing system operations, we may reconsider the terms of our renewal. Please advise." My thumb hovered over the screen. They weren't just questioning the company, they were questioning its choices, and they were still watching me. That evening, as I locked up my post at 6:15 in the evening and stepped outside, I caught a glimpse of Maya waiting by the corner. She didn't wave, just nodded once. Then Leo joined her. Then Ava. I didn't call for them, but maybe I didn't have to. It wasn't official. No calendar invite, no email thread, just a few quiet nods, exchanged glances, and one whispered time, 7:30 in the evening. We met at a small coffee shop tucked behind an auto repair garage. Dim lighting, humming espresso machines, and a scratched-up wooden table in the far back corner. I got there early. I needed a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of what I was about to share. By 7:45, Maya arrived, then Leo, Ava, Darren, all in street clothes, all carrying a weight none of us named. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was anticipation. I pulled a thick folder from my bag and unfolded a large sheet of paper across the table. My handwriting covered every inch, circles, arrows, shorthand notes I'd developed years ago and never needed to explain. They knew what they were looking at. This, I said, tapping the center of the page, is what they're still running, the backbone of the system. No matter what James says, he's changed. The core logic is mine. They just don't know where the cracks are forming. They leaned in. I walked them through it. Dispatch logic, inventory sync protocols, cross-regional data failovers. Then I showed them what I'd added. Lock mode. It's a stability safeguard, I said quietly. If error rates spike past a certain point, it shuts the whole system down. Clean. Controlled. Nothing moves unless a hard key is re-entered. And you're the only one with the key? Leo asked. I nodded. Yes. And if we time this right, it'll look like an internal autocorrection, unless they go digging. And even then, they'll need me. Ava crossed her arms. So what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, I said. But if you're planning to leave, Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning is the system's scheduled maintenance cycle. If lock mode activates then, everything will freeze, logistics, orders, client dashboards, and there won't be anyone left to fix it. Silence. Then Maya said, We go together, or we don't go at all. Leo nodded. Together. Even Darren, the quietest of the bunch, whispered, I'm in. We didn't clink mugs or raise fists. We didn't need to. What happened at that table wasn't rebellion. It was alignment. A system syncing itself from the inside out as we gathered our things to leave. Leo pulled me aside. He slipped something into my hand. Thick cardstock. Jet black. No logo. What's this? I asked. A contact. He said, They've been watching what TRX is doing. And what you're not doing. They don't want the system. He paused. They want you. I tucked the card into my folder, next to the blueprint, then looked back at the others as they disappeared into the night. We weren't an army, but we didn't need to be. We were a system, and now we were aligned. By Friday morning, the air inside TRX felt heavier, colder, quieter. James had started sniffing the shift in mood. Too many side glances in the hallway. Too many whispered conversations ending the moment he walked in. His paranoia sharpened into action. One by one, members of my former team were summoned for performance reviews, the kind held behind closed doors with HR sitting silently in the corner at 9:20 in the morning. Tomas didn't return from his review. Ava stopped answering internal messages. Maya sent me a single-word text. Careful? I said nothing. I stood at the front desk like I had every day, smiling for visitors, checking IDs, pretending I didn't feel the noose tightening, but it tightened. At 11:40 in the morning, the elevator dinged and out stepped James, flanked by Marcus from HR and a young guy I recognized from the security audit team. His presence wasn't subtle, clipboard in hand. Scanning the room like he was searching for smoke, James made a beeline for the open floor. Everyone, he announced, loud enough for the glass walls to vibrate. I'd like your attention. The room fell silent. I've been hearing chatter, he continued. Whispers about coordination. About sabotage. Let me be clear, this company has no room for disloyalty. Then his eyes turned to me. And Lena, he said with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. I certainly hope you haven't been encouraging anything disruptive. My hands were folded. My feet were steady. My blood, however, pounded hard enough to hear in my ears. I arrive on time, I said. I do what I'm assigned. I greet guests. I scan IDs. I met his stare, unblinking. And I haven't asked anyone to do anything they didn't already believe in. A silence followed, thick, stifling. James let out a forced chuckle. Of course. Let's all stay focused, shall we? He walked off. The HR rep followed, but the tension remained, clinging to every desk and every pair of eyes that dared meet mine. That evening, I stayed late, ostensibly to cover a delayed courier delivery. The building emptied by 7:30. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was full of anticipation. At 8:15 in the evening, the system pinged, a back-end error alert. Internal security flagged an inconsistency in the dispatch protocol. The audit script triggered an automated containment check. A blinking red line of code appeared at the bottom of the server log. Lock mode initialized, authorization required. And below it, root verification pending, system override only accessible by Ho. I stared at the screen, unmoving. They had combed through team loyalty, policies, even my old office, but they hadn't checked the one place that still remembered who built everything. The system had spoken, and it knew who still held the keys. 9 o'clock in the morning, sharp. I was standing at the front desk, like always, clipboard in hand, badge clipped to my collar, the same calm expression I'd worn for weeks. But under the surface, my chest was tight with stillness. It wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was precision. A final inhale before release. Across the building, screens began to freeze. It started in the warehouse module. Incoming orders stopped auto-routing. Then logistics. Inventory queues stalled mid-sync. Procurement dashboards turned blank. Operations control boards blinked again, then flashed white by 9:05. Every screen across TRX's global command interface was down. One by one, departments turned to ash. Phones rang. Emails stacked. Couriers called for pickups that never arrived. Clients hit refresh over and over, trying to pull up delivery tracking only to see a blank page and a spinning icon. I stood in the lobby and listened as chaos unfurled in clipped voices and fast footsteps overhead. Then came James. He stormed through the turnstiles at 9:12, blazer half-buttoned, phone glued to his ear. "What do you mean the system's not responding?" he barked into the mic. "Have you rebooted the middleware? Check the real-time sync logs. And where the hell is Marcus?" The receptionist beside me flinched as he passed. I didn't. At 9:15, I got the first buzz in my pocket, then the second, the third, the fourth. By 9:20, 12 messages had landed. Each was a resignation letter. Digital signatures, time delivery, all sent within 2 minutes of each other. Maya, Leo, Ava, Darren, Tomas. Each message was cold and clean, no drama, no explanation, just effective immediately. Upstairs, the war room descended into shouting. I could hear James pacing, swearing, throwing orders like lifeboats on a sinking ship. "Get me back-end diagnostics. I want full system recovery now." At 9:31, someone in IT tried to initiate a forced override. That's when the message appeared. On every screen still functioning, from HR terminals to fulfillment kiosks. Bold white text scrolled across black. System lock mode active. Override authorization required. Only original system creator can reactivate. Silence hit harder than the crash. For the first time in weeks, no one moved. James emerged from the glass-walled conference room slowly, like a man walking through fog he couldn't explain. He looked at me. I didn't look away. He stepped forward, stopped at the desk, and opened his mouth to speak. But nothing came out. I leaned slightly, just enough for my badge to catch the light. "I'm still on time," I said quietly. "Still doing the job you gave me." Then I turned my gaze to the clock behind him. It was 9:33 in the morning. The system wasn't crashing. It was waiting. By 10 o'clock that morning, the building had gone quiet in a new way. Not from resignation, though 12 desks now sat empty, but from recognition. People weren't rushing anymore. They were watching, waiting, listening for what would happen next. At 10:42, James returned to the lobby. Gone was the ironed confidence. the polished arrogance. His tie was loosened, and there was a sheen of panic under his eyes. I could tell he hadn't slept, maybe not since the system locked him out. He stopped a few feet from my desk, cleared his throat, then lowered his voice. "Lena, can we talk?" I didn't move. I simply lifted my eyes to meet his. He didn't have the upper hand anymore, and we both knew it. "I need your help," he said. I gestured toward the side conference room, glass walls and all. If he wanted a negotiation, it would be public, inside. He tried to keep his composure. "The board's furious. Clients are escalating. We've lost 3 distribution cycles already." He glanced down at a tablet in his hand. "I'm authorized to offer you reinstatement, full title, back pay, even a private office, corner if you want it." I waited. "I know you're angry," he continued, "but let's be practical. You built the system. No one else can unlock it." Still, I didn't speak. I opened my folder and pulled out 2 sheets of paper. The first was a contract, clean, simple, binding. Ownership transfer of the entire infrastructure stack, past, present, and future builds, to me. James's face changed. He scanned the document, throat tightening. "You want to own it?" he said. Voice thin. "I already do," I replied. "You just never asked who registered the original architecture. But now I'm giving you the chance to make it official." He hesitated. "You don't want the title back?" "No," I said flatly. "I want separation. I want ownership. And I want out." Silence. Then, slowly, he signed. I slid the second paper across the table. It was a list of 12 names, those who'd resigned. "They come with me, if they want to, no questions asked." James looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. At 11:30 in the morning, the system came back online, quietly, without ceremony. Orders resumed. Dashboards lit up. The building exhaled. By 1 o'clock, 3 of our top clients, Global Source, Meridian Trade, and Atlas Freight, had sent official notices terminating their contracts. They didn't give reasons. They didn't need to. They knew what mattered. Not the system, not the brand, not the building, the builder. I walked out of the glass room and back to the desk where I had once been erased. But I wasn't erased anymore. I was in control. And now, the company would finally learn what that really meant. 1 week later, I stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window. No badge, no clipboard, no uniform, just a black blazer, a quiet smile. And my name etched on the door behind me. Lena Ho, founder and systems architect. The office was smaller than TRX's, but it didn't matter. The light was warmer. The silence was calm. Not cold. 12 desks were arranged in a clean grid behind me, each occupied by someone who had once followed me into battle when no one else believed we'd win. Maya was on a call. Whiteboard full of API logic behind her. Tomas was coding in the zone. Noise-canceling headphones on. Ava and Leo were huddled at a table, troubleshooting a new modular interface for client dashboards. Laughter occasionally drifted across the room, soft and earned. We didn't have everything, but we had ourselves, and that was enough to build again. The startup didn't have a name yet. We were still deciding. We had offers from 3 seed-stage investors already. One of them the mysterious contact from Leo's black business card. The one who'd said, "We don't want the system. We want the woman who built it." They'd been watching, too. The day after I walked out of TRX, news had broken. TRX loses infrastructure team after sudden system lockdown. Insider sources point to internal turmoil. Within hours, LinkedIn lit up. Tech blogs speculated. Former clients reached out. But none of it compared to the email I received that morning. It was from Global Source Logistics, the same client who'd once questioned whether to renew. The subject line was simple. "We're ready when you are." The message: "We value long-term relationships built on reliability, clarity, and integrity. We're prepared to resume our partnership with one condition. The system must be under your direction. Let us know when we can begin. No drama, no politics, just business and respect. I closed the email, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. It hadn't been about revenge. Not really. It had been about taking back authorship of my own work, my own worth, my own future. They tried to write me out of the story, so I started a new one. Maya stepped into my office with 2 mugs. "Client call in 15 minutes, she said, smiling. "And we really need to pick a name," I smirked. "You got suggestions?" She shrugged. "Something simple, something that says what we are." I looked out the window, sunlight bouncing off the glass of a neighboring building, the same building where I once stood in a uniform they chose for me. Now, I wore my name. "We'll figure it out," I said, because we always did. What happened to Lena is something many of us fear, but far too many have lived through, being erased by the very system we helped build. This isn't just a story about corporate betrayal. It's a story about reclaiming authorship, about knowing your value, even when others try to rewrite your role, about not reacting with noise or chaos, but responding with quiet clarity, strategy, and truth. Lena didn't scream. She didn't sabotage. She didn't beg. She observed. She understood. She waited. And when the time came, she moved, not for revenge, but for restoration, not to destroy what failed her, but to rebuild what could outlast it. The lesson here is simple, yet powerful. Your value is not defined by titles, offices, or someone else's narrative. If you've built something with your mind, your time, and your soul, it remembers you. And when the system forgets, you don't have to fight louder, you just have to move smarter. So if you've ever been underestimated, sidelined, or replaced by someone who didn't do the work, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not powerless. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or of something you've lived through, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment below. Tell us what part hit home the most. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. And if you'd like more real, raw stories like this, stories of resilience, quiet strength, and poetic justice, don't forget to subscribe.